Got everything on the control.
In some ways.
I can't see the. There. Got it, right? Yeah, so, I don't know if the, what's the word called? Silver Spring. So we had to
Springs.
swap a laptop out in a big mess. I don't know if the audio settings were correct. I don't know.
You have audio on this?
This one should be okay. Is this when you
You have
start?
audio on this presentation?
No.
Okay.
Get audio in and all that stuff. Silver Spring needs to be looked at.
Right now?
Yeah, exactly. Is that nice?
Okay, perfect. All right, I think we can start so that we can make sure that we kind of get through everything since it's only 45 minutes. But thank you for coming to our workshop, reflecting on the challenging utilizing reflective writing to promote positive learning climates. So this is the brainchild of a lot of different people, some of whom are in the room and who will be helping facilitate. All of us are members of COSEF, the Collaboration of Surgical Education Fellows, which is a group that was started a few years ago to really promote surgical education research, networking, collaboration across institutions. And so we're very, very happy that we've been able to work together to put together this workshop. So with any education related work, we'll ask if you could fill out a workshop pre-survey. And this is to just kind of get a sense of what your level of comfort is with reflective writing and what your experiences are. So we'll just give like a few, like 30 seconds to fill it out. It should be very short. All right, thank you. So our learning objectives for this workshop are to understand the importance and benefits of reflective writing and reflective practice, to engage in a reflective writing exercise and some facilitated small group discussions, and to envision ways to be able to facilitate these types of sessions at your own institutions and contexts and to address barriers to implementation. So we'll have like a very brief didactic session on reflective practice and writing, and then we'll spend most of the time actually doing some like group work. So we'll have everyone engage in a mini reflective writing session with some small group discussion, and then also engage in a brainstorming session on how to design reflective writing prompts, as well as implementation strategies and mitigation of potential barriers to implementation. So what is reflection or reflective practice? So it's really our ability to review, interpret, and understand our experiences to be able to guide our present and future behavior. And it's a metacognitive process that really creates a greater understanding of both the self and your situation to guide those future actions. And why is it really necessary in medicine? Well, reflective writing and reflective practice skills are crucial for providers to be able to become competent, self-aware, and have their ability to self-monitor and self-assess your performance. And this is actually really related to a lot of the core competencies that we learn about in medicine and in residency, specifically the core competency of practice-based learning and improvement, of which a subcompetency is self-reflection and lifelong learning. So reflective writing is one of the many strategies that exists for reflective practice in medical education. And no, it's not simply accomplished by assigning people writing exercises. Really, reflective writing should be a tool to move from knowledge telling to knowledge transforming. And this can be accomplished through actually sharing reflections with a group and an engaged facilitator, with the ultimate purpose being not to judge, but rather to examine people's experiences critically. And reflection should involve really 4 key elements: some degree of elaboration or interrogation of the student's experiences, being purposeful by requiring a degree of puzzling over an attempt of puzzle solving when it comes to challenges that students express in their writing, promoting a move toward transformed thinking, where you're able to develop a deeper sense of meaning surrounding your experiences, and ultimately for students to be guided toward transformed action and to be able to approach future experiences and similar problems in new and enlightened ways. And ultimately, when done well, reflection and reflective writing can lead to the development of caring and capable physicians. So what do you really need to conduct a reflective writing session? You need dedicated time to actually do the session. You need a safe space for students and learners to be able to share and discuss their reflections. You need an engaged and non-judgmental facilitator who asks more than tells, clear learning goals, and well thought out prompts, where the best prompts really help address something called a disorienting dilemma, which is basically a situation that is not easily solvable. And Alan Peterkin from the University of Toronto has 10 tips that he's suggested about how to utilize reflective writing with students. I'll quickly go over them. Establishing ground rules, creating that safe space, suggesting that learners write about real life personal incidents, providing short, simple writing prompts that can capture the imagination. And when a student reads a piece to the group, really encouraging them to read the story as if written from start to finish. So a lot of times learners are apologetic. They have like a preamble where they're like, well, I know I'm not a good writer, but so none of that, just for students to really just share their experiences in a non-judgmental setting. To ask questions to deepen reflection, and that's really the role of the facilitator. To encourage students to write regularly, even if it's just for themselves. To remind students that clinical stories, especially about patients, are always co-constructed and don't belong to the physician writer alone. And that teachers or facilitators should be ready to intervene if a student reveals distressing content, for example, issues related to abuse, harm, or professional boundary violations. And ultimately, after the session is finished, to encourage students to continue writing throughout their career as an ongoing form of personal reflection. So that being said, we want to be like more engaged and not just do didactic stuff for everyone. So we're going to actually have you engage in a mini reflective writing session with a facilitated small group discussion. So raise your hand if you're one of our facilitators. So we have John, Josh, Connie, and Colleen. And so they'll kind of split themselves up in like probably, I think 2 different small groups would probably be better. And we'll do a writing prompt. So you can use any writing implement that you want. You can use your laptop, phone, but we also have pen and paper if you want to just write things down yourself. So we'll start by saying this is a safe space. So anything that you share in here will not leave this room. And really it's a way for us to kind of practice what it's like to actually be in a reflective writing session. And this is a prompt that we actually do at reflective writing sessions for our medical students who rotate and do a surgical preclinical elective with us. So I'll read out the prompt and then we will work on it together. So the page was labeled as urgent. On the phone, she was curt, not answering my many questions and hanging up quickly. I rolled my eyes and let out a slight groan. I had endured my fair share of encounters with her. I felt like she didn't really have a grasp on patient acuity and needs. My other colleagues had also had challenging encounters with her. I asked her to help with getting the patient ready for the OR, and she didn't even respond back. She's so demanding, she assumes what she asks for is a priority without realizing all the other things we need to get done. She could be difficult and dismissive, and we often felt devalued by her. Our hours were long enough as it is, our job taxing and often underappreciated. Sure, I was still learning and getting a grasp of being at this new phase in my career, but it was still hurtful not to be taken seriously, to be given respect. I wondered. So finish the next paragraph of this vignette. And you don't have to like complete like an actual story or anything. It's just where, based on how you interpret this, what do you think the next paragraph would look like? All right. So we'll have like some time, probably about like 5 to 7 minutes to write things down, and then we'll share it as a group in your 2 small groups. Individually, yes, you're writing individually, but then we'll share the reflections in our small groups.
And so how big were you? Small groups, do you think?
So, I mean, we could do it like as this half of the room, this half of the room, and then that way, like John, if you want to come here with Colleen,
Yeah,
we could facilitate this group, and then.
format.
All right, so just finish up the last like sentence or so that you're writing. And then if you want to just kind of like turn around your chairs so that you can face into your small group. And we'll ask that some of you read out what you've written into the rest of the members of your small group. And that will help like our facilitators kind of guide some of this discussion. Some questions to think about is who is the I and who is the she in the paragraph that you finished or in how you interpreted it? What were some of like your personal experiences that maybe informed how you reacted to the piece? Those are some good like launching points to kind of start some of the discussion.
Or even if you wanted to start up, do you think the I that you were as a in the battery, like everyone has different activity?
I was trying to imagine a different scenario.
Yeah, I just don't kind of challenge myself, right?
And
Who I thought could have been better. Right, so I,
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
no, so I ran into what was like other interpretations. I'm saying, I interpreted receiving the phone call. I was, so I wondered, the position of those that are great for that everyone else knew and understand that I had one limitation. Very way of doing well. I thought I got my either, but I don't want that. Problem.
Anyone wants to read out what they wrote, that would be great. I was like rich, and finish with that. Okay. Okay, I'll be brave.
Yes, I love it.
VA surgeon.
Yeah.
And the rest
Okay,
over
so-
other residents.
So I wonder, with that in mind, as a female intern and a female nurse. I wonder how often I would encounter this in residency and whether it could be like this in all. Would it be better when I was a chief resident, when I was attending, or would it feel like this for the rest of my career? Was it because I was in female training, does she treat my male co-intern the same way? So I endure this, or is there a way to get into that?
I also like that, like in the cats, a lot of mention struggle that may have not been. Thank you. Okay. I wonder what the role of expertise started with. A loss rate of a primary effective.
What was the barrier?
My own exhaustion. Locked down.
Am I looking for
I don't know.
However, whatever it happened, but this was not good.
Yeah. But that actually happens, like, in a section, like the first one, we found out was kind of.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think? Highlighting that, the big component of what.
We dealt with this when I wrote this. A lot of it was, the other one, the nurses in our offices did not know that we were professors are. And they work through that to figure out. 6 a.m. at the end of the month. I read it, like, I wonder if she actually knew on a day-to-day basis, but every hour, so we did. Lots of you were, or something, or actions. I got to get about for a day off.
Yeah, it might be their person who's acting this way. So
Things like the really I think that's actually something that when we've done this session for other medical students, they actually, at the very, we know that very how much of an empathetic approach.
Yeah.
It's not that they're very defensive, it's more of a, I wonder why they're things like.
It's really how it's like affecting other people, or if it affects other people the same way.
Right, you know.
Yes.
A lot of maybe choose on the stuff like that. People would, you know, not just a lot of that.
Yeah, I know for this more thing you heard about it, you know, against them, it's not like they're doing stuff. It's always the thought. Okay, for us to go last.
A lot of. It is a self-help.
Yeah, that is true. I think there is a
I'll also say that it depends on where in your career you might, whether you're in that first right now, or you're a resident that will advance. Is it like a real story? All those, maybe not in the last, throughout the last one. The slavery is not a big veteran. Yeah, the part about it. So, what I would do is in that, yes, with my buddy, you know, I take a deep breath. And I say the deepest prayer about 5 minutes. And slow bits right down. And I remind myself that you can't allow those who anger you to control you. I remind myself that we shouldn't let our critics set our agenda. Take some more inhales, some more exhales. Now that I'm responding word for word what you guys are saying, I remind myself, this is everybody said it. I listen to this, my wife talks about the power of isolating. There's a verse in the Old Testament in the New Testament, it basically says, return to evil, he cold and fire. That's a way to respond. You shouldn't burn time. Well, I can just read that paragraph. When the first response, I love it. I wonder why is there, I'm working well, or you would support language, but I would say that. Why are we not doing post, perhaps most people in the very, there might be time to go on to say a word or two, but do it when you're calm and not when you're angry. Sounds kind of dark. But basically, I could have smiled over that guy, the Scottish minister, and I experienced it, but he said, every time for everyone, I don't start battle stress, so this is what that battle is, you may have, especially with Charlotte, she may be worried about getting out of here and getting home, so we don't know that. So, I think what we said, we all said, it's all about the patient. Also, we said, start with the patient, continue with the patient, include the patient. Our own anger, and I'll show her, and I'm not gonna take that crap. I think he's turning in. But that's because I've done it the other way, and it doesn't work, it's not working, so just outline. But it's gonna work.
There's a lot of ways,
Yeah.
There's a lot of
I feel people say, you know, going. You have a good man, you probably goes blown it before and you've done it the wrong way, so you hopefully will learn from your mistakes, so. Been on both sides of that coin.
Yeah, I guess speaking as a junior resident, I tried to go through a lot, but real bad.
We all do.
Yeah.
And you see, like, and yeah, it was always interesting when you're getting different experience together, because that means that my own program, the freezing force, it's a lot different than that group, the fives who are having.
No, I think
On
that.
the whole great time.
Residents came to the cure. Very secure at the bottom, very secure, even though you see it, some are arrogant and over.
The people that can be on board for that, it doesn't quite fit with the prompt, but also when patients, don't understand that they're all different, but you're trying to set patients. Yeah, and so that, because now we're in with you, planning things, do come first, but I also have certain other people who also need to come first. How do you balance those? Not exactly.
They're gonna take all of their people.
And
Very dramatic and a completely different like now that I'm reading this again, instead of I see it obviously there, but when I read this problem for the time that like I completely glossed over that.
still, yeah.
But I got a text from one of my colleagues who got it yesterday, last night, there's a doctor's strike that's been going on. And so the place like the hospital is some private clinics open, but the hospital is. And so he had somebody that had a problem that they were to be seen and managed care now, but they basically had 3 pounds overload. In the halls, theater, the pool, everybody's exhausted.
So maybe just another couple of minutes to kind of wrap up the discussion.
Oh, you guys are from the perspective of.
It sounds like when it's a return-based spot, that's from the perspective of others.
Did anybody like write about it?
Sometimes it is.
Morning rounds.
If I were to come up with here,
They wrap the rounds, but then.
when you're in the grind, it's feeling some burnout.
Come back on track.
You think this is not-
But it's something, I think, it's an innovation. I believe that which patients are going to have.
Idea, but great idea.
All right, so we'll bring it back to the larger group just because I want to make sure that we do some of our like brainstorming on how you actually implement these and what some barriers are. I heard some great discussion. So just as like a quick kind of reference, it was written kind of purposely vague so that people could interpret it in different ways. And I think that actually allows for a lot more of like a rich examination of what we imagine our roles to be, what we imagine interprofessional dynamics to be like in the hospital. So when I've showed this prompt to residents, they very much identify themselves with the I in general and the she as a nurse. And when I've showed this to nurses, it's flipped. So the nurses identify themselves as the I and the she as like a resident or an attending. And the medical students, when we've done it for them, in general, they view the I as themselves and the she as an attending. And so it's very interesting, like what our own personal experiences are kind of going into reflective writing sessions. And when we're given prompts like this, I think it'll really allows people to kind of consider their roles, their past experiences, but also to explore ideas like, negativity in the workplace, but also things like empathy. So what we've heard from different groups, but also from the medical students is a tremendous amount of empathy for the she character in this of what's happening in her life, what's going on with her that's making her feel like this. And also a lot of introspection about what they want to be like when they are practicing physicians. Like, I don't want to necessarily treat people this way. How do I stay true to who I am and the values that I came into medical school with or to residency with, and keep that continuing when I'm in attending. So it definitely allows for a lot of rich discussion, but it's purposely vague for that particular reason. So our last kind of big agenda item is to kind of think about how you might design a reflective practice or reflective writing prompt, and what would be impactful in your particular context and for the learners that you're going to work with. So for about like 5 minutes or so, if you could go back into your small groups and kind of talk amongst yourselves about like how might you potentially develop or write these prompts, or what resources do you think you might utilize? And we'll give you some resources at the end of the session. But what types of prompts do you think are going to be most impactful for your learners? And what are the topics that you think are most important to address in sessions for your learners? And what are like some of the unique challenges you think they face that would benefit from really reflecting and exploring it further? All right.
But I just want my first, big part.
If you really try to do it, one of the next part of the after, right? I've never heard of that term specifically, except in that situation, I don't know about journaling and things like that. But I've never heard this term before, and so I can learn see what the definition.
Yeah, my bias.
What is the?
That's right. You know, there was movement about 10, 15 years ago called Married with Medicine. Came out of New York. Yeah. And we had a guy in our class, very many got in, but we began listening to the patient. And that's something. So that gave 2 hours, 2 years, and all now for a purpose. I think
So I guess the value added, you take each person's individual prompt, the car, thing, and then if you're kind of showing up on the prompt, then you're, oh, then there's a variety.
Situations that here we're given scenarios, but it's not our, it's, when we like to improvise with it, improvise why. There are other prompts that are really like.
not create, it's like one of the here, like. I learned that you were. You're part of the APDS. That's a great question. We have to walk through questions or that. Way to figure it out. I think the key of all is the reflection on the show. Yeah, and so like getting that, what my parents. Like the
Oh,
most
it's
of
the
the
next generation where you're talking about not. Like, and kind of give some different, like, branches that they can go down.
particularly.
What it comes up with, but I agree, and start the idea of like what you want to get out of the bowl, or the way that it starts with the time. Yeah. I think a couple of end up in something thought of finding one. Being able to think about that and share that, or they have to share. So, reflecting that now, for example, but you know, you know, where those that's so, yeah, but generally like, saying something that's like.
Bad, probably as well. Drill down on something else there. In the last 2 days or last week.
Yeah, a little problem that is months in that way, but it's program. You have to several parents, and then it allowed other individuals to stand up and reflect on that reflection or and it would make in person offset in regular clothes and I came in and it was on the same
Yeah,
time.
it was really beautiful.
Yeah. And I like that too, some people have, like, some of it seems like big, but it's like, it goes in shopping, but there might be the art, some people have it.
You don't know what it was, and when you go to the session, you know, part of that, you don't know. Like, I like the game for 5 to 7 minutes. I know that. I would back into it, but that's kind of what I worry about in the I think I know they're all things that will show us that and I know how to experience it, but there are also a lot of people who are very focused on math, you know, like engineering. People are just a little bit, it's not as strong to left, right, you know, maybe I agree with someone from people that will. If anyone encourage that.
Three different categories, three different ways. I thought that was fair. I never thought about it when we were in college.
I think first time I remember the eyes ones that I was nervous, which I thought was interesting, but I felt like the eye perspective was supposed to be like, you know, trying to communicate the resin or something.
Yeah, we all want to wait for it. Before COVID, did your, like, actually publish, or like, whatever they started, number of printed Christmas installs?
Yeah, because if you have too much, like, more, you're already in furniture. Yeah, you're into it. We've had after the first year, we have a writer resident, she's a PhD writer.
I think you're really cool to have it, like, people something like, I feel like all the time, like.
She actually put on my website, it was nice because it's
Any level is not empathetic.
Then at the same time, they always tell them someone who's out.
The problem, but not going to realize that.
Circle of trust. So I think it's just kind of
people are different.
how sensitive the topic is, like.
Yeah, like I didn't
Yeah.
All right, so we'll come back to the main group. So one thing I heard was, you know, how do you even like, you know, what are the different kind of prompts that exist out there? And the reality is that the example that we had where you finish the paragraph is just one of many different styles that you can do. But really the two main things you have to consider when you want to write an effective writing prompt is consider the situation and the directions. So the situation is basically the general topic that you want students to write about, and it's intended to spark their interest and be consistent with their experience. So, you know, if you want students to explore interprofessional dynamics, that previous vignette might be something you want to do. If you want to just ask them, you know, describe a challenging patient encounter, that could be it. And then that's what they write about. So it can be as specific or vague, depending on the kind of situation and topic you're trying to elicit. And then the other important element is the directions. So the directions describe the task they have to complete. Finish this vignette, answer this question, you know, or just contemplate internally, whatever it is, that should be stated in a way that really encourages students to want to share their knowledge and experience and inspire their thought and creativity. So one of the things, you know, like if you're like, well, I'm not really a writer, I don't know really where to start. How do I go about doing this? Well, ChatGPT is out there. So if you just put in, you know, write a reflecting writing prompt about a resident having a difficult patient encounter. So now it creates something like reflect on a challenging patient encounter of your experience, consider these questions, you know, how did you navigate the complexities, what insights did you get? And I'm not saying that we should be relying on ChatGPT to give us all of our prompts, but this is a, you know, if you're brand new to this, this is like a good starting point to just kind of figure out what are some of the questions that maybe I want to ask of my residents or of my learners? How might I potentially start to phrase it? We're very lucky that we get to work with people who really love to write and have been involved in narrative medicine. You may not have access to that, but if you do have access to people who are involved in the narrative medicine space, that's a great resource to utilize to actually generate and come up with some like creative writing prompts to try to get at some of those questions. The last couple of minutes, so unfortunately, I wanted to make this like a thing where you could actually like type it in and it turns into a word cloud, but the technology here is limited. But just as a larger group, if we want to just kind of shout out, what do you think some of the major barriers to implementation of these sessions are at your institutions or at your learning spaces? Time. Cultural acceptance of this is important.
I think there's stigma around, I guess, the term wellness activity. At least speaking as a med student, whenever we had wellness activity, you know, the turnout wasn't that great. So I think what was most impactful as a med student was, you know, having, you know, brunches or lunches or dinners where everybody can kind of gather together and, you know, share a meal and then kind of let the conversations come naturally. And through that, I think people were just like,
I think similar to that, the timing that you have time to get into the mind space, but then you're also not like, out of the mind space and then maybe directly to work again.
Mhm.
So you have kind of the appropriate.
The, having the correct facilitator who's not, where there's not a hierarchy or a conflict of interest or program director, or production director, somebody with the people in the session, so even though you say it's a safe space, but truly feel safe.
Mhm.
Guys, like question, like, how would you do that? Because like, it seems like there's a lot of interest here, and I assume that the people here are either in that role or aspire to be in that role, and would be the ones most likely to be interested in leading these kinds of activities.
For me or for anybody? Yeah.
Possible, so they can see not. Good, like, ground. Where it's not. The ground, other outside, outside. Right,
There's the opportunity for Professor Emeritus to come in and serve in a role like this.
And I think when it comes to sort of like institutional culture, I mean, that's very hard to navigate and change. Luckily for us, like this is like a session that we do pretty regularly for medical students who are in a surgical preclinical elective that our surgical education fellows run. So they have like a dedicated space to be able to do that. But I think the biggest challenge is I think reflective writing in narrative medicine is more acceptable in the undergraduate medical space, but it's very rarely offered in graduate medical education or even for faculty. Like faculty could tremendously benefit from having sessions like this. I'm sure there are plenty of challenges that faculty experience. And so the question is like being able to communicate with key stakeholders about why this is important. I mean, we can always refer back to the fact that it is a core competency for us to engage in self-reflection and lifelong learning, and to be able to do it in sort of a more structured, facilitated way in some way gives it a little bit more credence than saying like, oh, we're just going to have our residents just kind of like vent at each other, right? So this gives it a more sort of structured way of really approaching some of the challenges and also thinking about how to like come up with solutions to address those particular challenges.
Say one thing.
Yes.
Jessica Brooks, I don't know, she wrote a piece in New York Times last June. I have to write it down because otherwise I would forget it. But she was talking about people from faith-based backgrounds and what we call nuns. But she basically said almost everyone needs community to flourish.
And I think what happens is you get some people who don't have community, and I think that they do struggle.
Mhm.
And I think really having a core group, not necessarily a clique, but you have some people that you can actually be honest with, open with. It's like in a circle, it stays in this room kind of a thing.
Mhm.
And so even at my age, I have a couple of people that I meet with once or twice a month, you know, at a local pub that we can share, we can download, and I think we all need community, whether it's wherever, but in your residency especially, I mean, you need to go out and out there.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And what we found with these sessions is that it does really breed a sense of community and it builds a new community, especially among medical students who may not be as familiar with each other. Mostly because when they start to share their experiences, they realize like their perspective is not completely unique. Like there are other students who are also facing the same sort of internal struggles, who are also facing the same challenges. And so that also gives sort of kind of a sense of relief that you're not kind of going through the process and the struggle alone, that other people are sort of in the same boat, having somewhat of a similar experience. And that definitely breeds a sense of community and a sense of belonging. So kind of in conclusion, you know, this is a short workshop, so I hope it was, you know, enjoyable. You got to experience a reflective session yourself. But really, reflection is a very powerful tool that can help guide lifelong learning and self-improvement, particularly in the medical field. And reflective writing in particular is a really great strategy for facilitating reflection. But if we are going to do these sessions, we do require dedicated time to actually do them with our learners, a safe space for sharing and discussing reflections, and an engaged and non-judgmental facilitator who asks more than tells, the clear learning goals, the well thought out prompts, and ultimately you do need to have buy-in from key stakeholders. And I think that's where a lot of the challenge is. But there's a lot of literature, and it's an expanding field in the surgical and medical literature about the utility and the benefit of these types of sessions. And so hopefully as they become more prominent and it becomes sort of more established, it'll be easier to get buy-in from key stakeholders. So before I ask you to do like a quick post survey, for those of you who want access to some background information on reflective writing, some prompt writing resources, and also some example prompts that we've developed that you're more than happy to use, we're more than happy that you use them at your institutions. This is a link. It should take you to like a Google Doc that you should all be able to access. So it's a great starting point if you're trying to come up with this session as like a new thing at your institution or in your setting. You don't have to start from scratch. We've given you some resources that you can use and some prompts that you can use. And then, of course, if you could fill out our post survey, we would deeply appreciate it. And thank you all for coming and for such great discussion in your small groups. I hope you got something from it and enjoyed the experience. Thank you. Yes. This is, yeah, we're actively doing like a study right now, looking at our medical students. So like we like ask them about their experiences when they do the sessions with us and all that other stuff. Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Another potential avenue for
Yeah.
CASA, right?
Yeah.
So we